2005. So, before we even began to analyze the entire text, we thought we'd come up with a couple of grounds on which a ringtone could possibly be relevant metaphorically within the political context, of course. And a couple of things that we came up with were a ringtone could be a statement of a personal political affiliation. You could have the ringtone of the political party or the political ideology that you support. It could be a symbol of a very personal nationalistic identity. It could be a means of political mobilization, especially in areas where cell phones are prevalent, but other forms of connectivity and media are not so much. It could also be a symbolic way to state your opinion about the current state of political affairs. You could have a snippet from a speech of a politician that you thought was interesting or controversial, put it as a ringtone, transpose it against a song of your choice, bring in some irony, and just make a statement out of it. The phone rings, it becomes a talking point. We thought this was important because it serves as a good touchstone going forward while specifically analyzing the specific presidential fraud context of politics. To present the dialectical analysis, Ms. Chitra.
Doing a dialectical analysis of ringtones, specifically in the context of 2005 Philippines elections, in the context of presidential scandal during that time, considering the worker class as the electorate candidates in the country, whereas the means of production as the whole electoral process, and the final product as the efficient government of Philippines, whereas the owners are the government employees, the government officials. So in this context, we have done the analysis of mode of production and exploring the ringtone metaphor. In the context of surplus value and exploitation, the Philippines government is capitalistic, which derives its value through the service as well as manufacturing industries mainly. This lady, Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, became the president in 2005. She brought in several economic policies which led to the growth of Philippines. For example, the GDP in that era was 5%, average 5%, which was higher than the last 3 digits. The growth in those years was almost fastest as compared to the last 3 decades, and the real GDP value was reaching 7%. The economy was one of the few of those times which avoided contraction in spite of the 2008 financial crisis, and due to minimum dependence on the international securities. So, on the contrary, where it has a very worse impact on the poor, the poor population grew to 3.8 million during that time. As of December 2008, 4.3 million households faced involuntary hunger. Inflation reached almost 12.5%, which was a 17-year high. The shift from an agrarian economy was at the cost of the poor population among the agricultural sector. The World Bank said that this is due to the corruption within the government. Ringtones, on the other hand, ringtones were totally segregated from the government. They were free and ubiquitous among the poor population. Even the poorest of the poor population had access to them and could express them freely.
The second concept that we explored in this dialectical analysis is the class and class struggle, and this is something for which we found several instances for. The Philippines as a country has a history of class struggle. there was the People Power Revolution of 1986, wherein the middle classes got together and overthrew, you probably call him desperate. He was in power for 20 years, the economy had stagnated, people were fed up and they overthrew him. And then there was the EDSA revolution of 2001, where the president in power belonged to a very dominant landowner class, and his policies seemed to favor only his particular section of the society. And the point that I'm trying to make is they have a history of class struggle. Even for the Arroyo scandal, when it broke out, the movement was led by the electorate, a majority of which was composed of the middle classes. The government, which in this case, as we assumed, the owners, had failed in its economic and social policies on its promises that it had set about for the electorate. And to make matters worse, it had shamed itself through the various scandals. Now, this obviously created a very direct conflict within the minds of the electorate, which prompted them to come up with a movement to overthrow the Arroyo government. Now, 33% of the population in 2006 was using mobile phones. This was a sharp increase from 10% in 2000. It's therefore natural that the middle classes resorted to ringtones as a means of expressing political dissent. This was also accentuated by the fact that at that point of time, to curb the spread of the tapes, the Arroyo government had banned all forms of media, at least playing the tape on all forms of media. So it became all the more important. What is particularly interesting was the design of these ringtones. Let me just play one for you. This was the tape of, so just to give you a little bit of background, it was alleged that Arroyo was the president of the Philippines, had rigged the elections of 2006, and her phones were tapped. She was having a conversation with her assistant regarding this, and the phones were tapped and a recording of the tape was spread in the media. She tried her best to stop it by banning all forms of media, but they spread through ringtones. So if you paid attention to it, there was the song that the tape was transposed on was called Honesty, which is a very ironical, sort of a satirical way of looking at the whole controversy. What's even more interesting was that the song was chosen not only because it had an ironical theme to it, but also, and this is true for all the songs and all the themes that were chosen to transpose these ringtones on, they all had distinct percussions and sonorities, so that they'd be audible even on very low fidelity cheap cell phones which were owned by a majority of the population. So the class in this context was looking out for each other. The aim was not to leave anybody out. They had to make sure that when the message was heard, even the poorest of the poor could hear it audibly and clearly. Another interesting thing is the themes that they use in the ringtones. Now, Hollywood movies are extremely popular in the Philippines. everybody watches it regardless of what class of society they belong to. The kind of soundtracks that they use, or the kind of dialogues that they use to transpose these ringtones on, movies like Scarface, Godfather, X-Men, The Last Samurai, were all movies that were either directly or indirectly about class struggle themselves. So it was a very nice self-referential kind of a statement to make within, while creating the ringtones, so that the people listening to the ringtones could automatically connect to it and gain a certain kind of inspiration to take forward the political momentum. Alienation. Now, Arroyo's presidency was plagued by a number of scandals and controversies. In fact, the very reason it became popular in the Western world or the local media was because of its scandals and its controversies. But it wasn't supposed to be that way. The previous government had failed on its promises. The Arroyo government was supposed to usher in a new dawn, so to speak, in the history of the Philippines. It was supposed to very accurately reflect the people's mandate, hence the people's efforts in going out of their houses and voting. But now it derived its value from something that was completely independent of the efforts of the people put in. It was known for some very unsavory things. The electorate therefore felt alienated from their own mandate, and which is probably one of the principal reasons why they felt that they needed a change. There was a ringtone that came up which was transposed on a very popular 50-cent song called In the Club. It was called the Buking ringtone. It's interesting because the song itself, In the Club, is a kind of a satirical take on the music industry, which is known to firstly cater to its own financial self-interests and then to the creative interests of the artists. So it served as a very, very good metaphor to sort of project how Arroyo's political self-interest was at the fore, above the people's interest, and how she sort of formed a political club, which is in direct reference to 50 cents in the club. Another very important thing was that all these ringtones were self-standing compositions. Now, they may have been borrowed from the music, and the song itself may have been, and the themes may have been borrowed from elsewhere, but the way they were finally concocted was completely due to the creative powers, the creative processes that the people of Philippines, the people who were engaged in making these ringtones, it was a product of their own creative processes. We thought it was interesting that, whether knowingly or unknowingly, they had made a statement to the government saying that you may have cut off our creative processes by failing to deliver on our mandate, but our creative processes and our creative powers are still very much intact, and we can come up with some very good forms of political demonstration.
Talking about the ideology, Arroyo tried to distort facts and conceal a lot of procedures and ban several media. She used these kind of actions to negate the existing contradiction within the government. The few examples are the overall in the electoral commission and opposition to coups and rebellions and rebels, the form of political solution, and the Congress during that time the congressional report was officially approved not to impeach her, and it was during that time the BJP song was used as a parody to highlight this distortion. Do you want to know the secret?
Listen, do you want to know the secret?
intro ends with the lines "Don't let me down," which can be seen as the electorate trying to question the government not to let them down. Talking about the contradiction, the array of governments was structured in such a way that the more they try to suppress the moment they gain more momentum. And the gatherings without the permission were banned, but this has incited people to protest more, and have ban on playing the tapes on media channels has led to the people to search for the tapes more with more reach. The ringtones being the only allowed media during that time became the means to protest. Coming to the form of content dichotomy in the managerial world, the HR department, the form is on the basis the company is supposed to be the equal opportunity employees without any discrimination. But the content is like set as per the hiring is done often based on the prejudice, stereotypes and misconceptions. And Krishnaman and Neckerman report found out that the employees believed that darkmen were unreliable, unruly, poorly educated and low skilled.
So we did research in this field and found that according to Deva Pager in 2003, the article shows that low skill and educational deficiencies contribute to low employment rates among the blacks. However, on the contrary, but even those who are qualified face the suspicion. Another research by Chitra and Catherine Newman in 2007 undertaken among 25 human resources managers in the Delhi NCR region. The sample size is small, but the firms are very big and are responsible for a significant number of hiring decisions in any given client. Decided on the basis of personal, they found that the recruitment process is decided on the basis of personal ties, religious ties and caste.
And these points look a little similar, they were taken from the ISS slides from last year.
Last year course. So what we propose is we should run extensive equal opportunity awareness campaigns internally in the firm, highlighting the importance of inclusive recruitment, the use of company mandated ringtones program within the company cell phones, preaching the message of equality in the recruitment process. We could use songs like Michael Jackson's Black or White or Mile Sur Mera Tumhara in Hindi, used to metaphorically use the prism message, like they were used as a ringtone in the Philippines context.
So, to conclude, we've come up with a hypothesis, kind of hypothesis. So, ringtones are, well, quite obvious, made up of music and our songs. Now, music has been scientifically known to have an effect on a person's consciousness and a person's mood. Ringtones, therefore, can potentially influence opinions, alter thought, and almost speak to you to an extent that it can completely shift your behavior from one end to the other. Therefore, their metaphorical potential, the metaphorical power is vast. Even in today's day and age where ringtones aren't really as much in fad as they were, say, back in 2006. Especially in a country like India, in the rural areas where, again, like I mentioned, internet connectivity is low, ringtones still are probably the only means of pop culture expression. One of the very few means at least. And therefore, their potential and power within the larger social and political context is vast. And that's it.